President Barrow and his cabinet ministers have considered and approved the cabinet paper on African Union Malabo Convention presented to them at the cabinet meeting on Thursday by the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy. The convention aims to set the essential rules and legal recognition of electronic communication and electronic signature. The convention is also geared towards setting up minimum standards and procedures to reach common approach on the security issues in Africa and address the need for harmonized legislation necessary to enhance cooperation in the area of cybersecurity in member states of the African Union. More on that is the Information Minister Lamin Queen-Jammeh.
Giving a brief background, the Honorable Minister said that given the international and transboundary nature of cybercrime in general, which constitutes a real threat to the development of the information society in Africa and beyond, there is need to implement the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and define the broad guidelines of an African strategy for the security of our cyberspace and combating cybercrime in member states.
The second cabinet paper discussed at the Thursday cabinet meeting was the declaration of Sanyang area for the development of a deep sea port, presented by the Works Minister.
Introducing the proposal, the Honorable Minister invited Cabinet to consider and approve the Sanyang area identified for the development of the new deep sea port for the Gambia to be declared and made available as well as encumbered. Also, all affected property owners be compensated and a freeze on all land allocations immediately to allow for quick valuation of the affected properties. Commenting on the background, the Honorable Minister said the strategic objectives for the establishment of the Sanyang Deep Sea Port is geared towards the need that the country possesses the appropriate infrastructure and facilities capable of handling current and forecast traffic levels, especially in relation to the prospects of oil exploration and exploitation and the potential for transit and transshipment traffic.
Cabinet, being aware of its mandate, considered and approved for the due process on land acquisition to begin by the ministry and her partners and stakeholders through a cabinet subcommittee.
Next was another paper on the impact of port operations on the cost of doing business was also presented by the Honorable Minister for Transport, Works and Infrastructure. Introducing the proposal of the paper, the Honorable Minister said, Cabinet is being informed about the issues surrounding the perception that the Port of Banjul operations has negative impact on the cost of doing business in the Gambia. The Honorable Minister then went on to explain that it is noticeable through media reports from statements uttered by both public servants and private individuals at different fora, as well as media outlets, purporting that the Port of Banjul is responsible for the added cost of doing business in the Gambia and the resultant increase in the price of commodities. Generally, the Honorable Minister went on, the major causes of the high cost of basic commodities are attributed to external factors, which are beyond the control of government. Findings have revealed that the impact of the post-COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted global supply chains, resulting in high freight costs. It is established that, for example, the freight cost to Banjul has increased by over 100% since November 2020.
Information Minister Lamin Queen-Jammeh said Cabinet in her turn has also agreed to form a ministerial committee that will thoroughly study the 9 points recommendation for further action on the impact of port operations on the cost of doing business. Also at the cabinet meeting on Thursday, the President and his ministers discussed the government stakeholder dialogue on what strategy for generation to mitigate risk to power supply. The paper was presented by the Minister of Petroleum and Energy.
In his introduction, the Honorable Minister said the Cabinet Memorandum seeks to A. Update Cabinet on the outcomes of the government stakeholders dialogue on what strategy for generation to mitigate risks to power supply, and B. Seek Cabinet's approval to implement the key recommendations of the dialogue. Commenting on the synopsis, the Honorable Minister reported on the precarious situation of electricity supply and the significant difference between a generation capacity of 45 megawatts against a peak load demand of 70 megawatts in 2017. The impact of this had been massive power outages, which through the steadfastness of government and the unwavering support from partners including the World Bank, recovered some lost generation capacity in both Brikama and Kotu, and also updated the 2015 electricity roadmap and implemented practical action plans by 2018, which resulted to significant increase to 105 megawatts for the GBA, Greater Banjul area, part of which including 30 megawatts came from car powership. The Honorable Minister went on to add that as the country tries to consolidate the gains made in the sector and expand the power supply system, there is need for extra vigilance in order to safeguard against possible future shortages.
Having been subjected to a very thorough discussion, it was also felt that the strategy for generation to mitigate risk to electricity supply is long overdue and consequently granted the request in the prayer.
Finally, was another presentation by the Honorable Minister of Communication and Digital Economy on Government Cloud Policy, Strategy and Implementation Plan 2023. Introducing the proposal, the Honorable Minister informed Cabinet that the memorandum presents Government Cloud Policy, Strategy and Implementation Plan 2023 for its approval and adoption. Commenting on the background, the Honorable Minister explained that the development of a sustainable government IT infrastructure, coupled with the need to digitally transform and modernize the public sector, leaves the government with no option but to vie for more innovative, economical, and sustainable infrastructure services. Such an infrastructure service model can only be achieved through the use of government modernized data center, enabled by virtualization technologies or government private cloud infrastructure, or the rationalization of government use of public cloud infrastructure or services.
The Cabinet paper on Government Cloud Policy, Strategy and Implementation Plan 2023 was also granted approval by Cabinet. Louis Mendy, GRTS.